I opened the envelope from the hospital with shaking hands. The number at the bottom made no sense. $473,862 for 3 days. 3 days in a hospital room while my husband Robert recovered from emergency surgery. I read it again, certain there had been a mistake. But there was no mistake. Every line item was there: the surgery, the ICU, the medications, the imaging, the consultations. Page after page of charges that added up to nearly $500,000. Our insurance had covered exactly $0 of it. The letter attached explained that the hospital was out of network, that the surgery was not pre-authorized, that several procedures were deemed not medically necessary. We were responsible for the full amount. We were 73 years old. We had worked our entire lives, saved carefully, done everything right. And now, because my husband had a heart attack and I called an ambulance that took him to the wrong hospital, we were going to lose everything. My name is Margaret, and Robert and I have been married for 51 years. We are ordinary people who lived ordinary, responsible lives. Robert worked as an electrician for 45 years. I was a school secretary for 38. We raised 3 children, paid our mortgage, saved for retirement. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had enough. We both had Medicare, of course, but we also had supplemental insurance through a private company, a plan we paid $400 a month for that was supposed to cover what Medicare didn't. We thought we were protected. We thought we had done everything right. Robert's heart attack happened on a Thursday evening. We were watching television after dinner when he suddenly clutched his chest. His face went grey. He couldn't catch his breath. I knew immediately what was happening and called 911. The ambulance arrived within minutes. The paramedics were efficient and professional. They stabilized Robert and loaded him into the ambulance. I asked which hospital they were taking him to. They said Memorial General. It was the closest facility with a cardiac unit. I didn't think to ask if Memorial General was in our insurance network. How could I? My husband was having a heart attack. I wasn't thinking about insurance networks. I was thinking about whether he would survive. Memorial General saved Robert's life. The emergency room team was excellent. They performed an emergency catheterization, found a 95% blockage, and immediately took him to surgery. They put in 2 stents. The surgeon told me afterward that if Robert had arrived even 20 minutes later, he probably wouldn't have made it. Robert spent 2 days in the ICU and 1 day in a regular cardiac unit. By Saturday afternoon, he was stable enough to come home. The care was exceptional. Every doctor, every nurse, every person who touched his case was professional and skilled. They saved his life. When we left the hospital, the discharge nurse handed me a thick folder of paperwork. Instructions for medications, follow-up appointments, cardiac rehabilitation information. Buried in the middle was a form I barely glanced at, an acknowledgement that I understood we might be responsible for costs not covered by insurance. I signed it. Everyone signs those forms. You don't really read them. You're exhausted and grateful and just want to take your husband home. The first bill arrived 3 weeks later. It was from the hospital for $23,000. The letter explained that this was our portion after insurance. I was shocked. 23,000 seemed astronomical. But I called the insurance company immediately to find out what had happened. That's when I learned that Memorial General was out of network. Our supplemental insurance plan had a narrow network of approved hospitals, and Memorial General wasn't one of them. Because Robert had gone to an out-of-network facility, our coverage was drastically reduced. I explained to the insurance representative that this was an emergency. I explained that I hadn't chosen the hospital. The ambulance had taken him to the nearest appropriate facility. I explained that my husband had been having a heart attack, and asking about insurance networks hadn't exactly been my priority. The representative was sympathetic, but firm. The policy was clear. Out of network emergency care was covered at 50% instead of 90%, and there were additional limitations and exclusions that applied. She suggested I speak with the hospital billing department about setting up a payment plan. I called the hospital. The billing representative pulled up Robert's account and explained that the 23,000 was just the first bill. Additional bills would be coming from the physicians, the anesthesiologist, the cardiologist, the surgical team, the radiologist, the laboratory. Each of them billed separately. The total would likely be much higher. I felt sick. I asked for an estimate of the total. She said she couldn't give me an exact number, but based on the procedures performed, I should expect total charges of around $200,000 to $250,000. $200,000. The number was incomprehensible. We didn't have $200,000. Our retirement savings was about $180,000. Our house had maybe $150,000 in equity. Even if we liquidated everything, we couldn't pay a bill that size. Over the next month, the bills kept arriving. The surgeon, $84,000. The anesthesiologist, $12,000. The cardiologist, $26,000. The emergency room physicians, $18,000. Each one came with an explanation of benefits from the insurance company showing massive disallowances and denials. I spent hours on the phone with the insurance company, trying to understand. Every conversation revealed new problems. The surgery hadn't been pre-authorized, impossible to do since it was an emergency, but required nonetheless. Several of the medications used weren't on the approved formulary. The second day in ICU was deemed not medically necessary by their utilization review team. One of the consulting physicians who had seen Robert wasn't in network, even though he was employed by the hospital. Each bill had a different reason for denial or reduction of coverage. Each conversation with the insurance company led to more paperwork, more forms to fill out, more documentation to submit. I became an expert in medical billing codes and insurance policy language. I spent my days fighting with insurance companies instead of caring for my husband, who was supposed to be recovering from a heart attack. Robert knew something was wrong. I tried to hide the stress, but he could see it on my face. Finally, 3 months after his heart attack, I showed him the stack of bills. The total had reached $390,000. Our insurance had covered about $60,000. We owed $330,000. Robert went pale. He asked how that was possible. I explained everything. The out-of-network hospital, the pre-authorization issues, the denials and reductions. I showed him the insurance policy language that I now knew by heart. I showed him the appeals I had filed that had all been denied. Robert started crying. I had seen him cry maybe 3 times in 51 years of marriage. He said this was his fault, that his heart attack was destroying us. I held him and told him not to be ridiculous, that none of this was his fault. But we both knew the truth. We were in a financial catastrophe with no way out. We met with a medical billing advocate that a friend recommended. She reviewed all our paperwork and told us we had a decent case for appeal. Emergency care should have been covered at in-network rates, regardless of where the ambulance took him. The pre-authorization requirements shouldn't apply to genuine emergencies. Several of the denials seemed to violate our policy terms. She agreed to take our case on contingency. She would get a percentage of whatever she managed to get the insurance company to pay. For 3 months, she fought on our behalf. She filed appeals, submitted documentation, made phone calls. She got some of the charges reduced or reclassified. But the insurance company held firm on the major issues. The hospital was out of network, period. Many of the procedures weren't pre-authorized, period. Their utilization review had determined certain care wasn't medically necessary, period. After the advocate exhausted all appeals, the final tally was still $290,000 that we owed. The hospital started calling. At first, they were sympathetic. They offered payment plans. We could pay $5,000 a month for the next 5 years. I wanted to laugh. We lived on Social Security and small pensions that totaled about $3,000 a month. After our basic living expenses, we had maybe $200 left over. Where did they think $5,000 a month would come from? When I explained we couldn't afford their payment plan, they became less sympathetic. They said if we didn't make arrangements, they would be forced to pursue legal action. I asked what that meant. They said they could place liens on our property, garnish Social Security payments, seize bank accounts. I hired an attorney. He specialized in medical debt and bankruptcy. He reviewed our situation and gave us the devastating news. Medical bankruptcy was probably our only option. We would have to liquidate most of our assets to pay as much of the debt as possible, then file for bankruptcy protection for the remainder. We could keep our house under the homestead exemption, but we'd likely need to take out a home equity loan to pay down some of the medical debt first. We could keep one car. We could keep a small amount in retirement accounts. Everything else would go to pay the hospitals and doctors. Robert was devastated. He had worked his entire life. He had saved carefully. He had done everything society told him to do: work hard, save money, buy insurance, be responsible. And now, at 73 years old, after suffering a heart attack, he was being punished for it. His life was saved, but our financial life was destroyed. We went through the bankruptcy process. It was humiliating. We had to document every asset, every expense, every dollar. We had to prove to a judge that we were truly indigent, that we couldn't pay our debts. At 73 years old, we stood in bankruptcy court with people half our age who had made irresponsible financial decisions. Except, we hadn't made irresponsible decisions. We had simply had the audacity to get sick. We took out a home equity loan for $80,000. It was all the bank would give us, given our age and income. That money went directly to the hospital. We filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy and discharged the remaining $210,000 in medical debt. We kept our house, but now we have a mortgage payment again, something we hadn't had in 15 years. $800 a month that comes out of our $3,000 monthly income. We kept one car, a 12-year-old sedan. We cashed out most of Robert's IRA to pay attorney fees and to catch up on bills we had fallen behind on during the 6 months of fighting the insurance company. Our credit is destroyed. Our retirement savings is gone. We're making house payments at 73 years old and will be until we're 90. We have no cushion, no emergency fund, no ability to handle any unexpected expense. If either of us has another medical emergency, I don't know what we'll do. The irony is that Robert is alive and healthy now. The surgery worked. His heart is strong. He takes his medications, eats right, exercises. The medical system saved his life, but it also destroyed the life we had built. I'm angry. I'm angry at the insurance company that denied coverage for an emergency. I'm angry at the hospital that charged $500,000 for 3 days of care. I'm angry at a healthcare system that bankrupts people for getting sick. I'm angry that we did everything right and still ended up here. Robert feels guilty. He apologizes constantly for having a heart attack, as if he chose to have a 95% blocked artery. He talks about wishing he had just died instead of bankrupting us. I tell him to stop saying that, but I understand where it comes from. We're living in the wreckage of our financial life, and it's hard not to wonder if it would have been better if the ambulance had been slower. I'm telling this story Because medical bankruptcy is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America, and seniors are particularly vulnerable. We think Medicare will protect us. We think supplemental insurance will cover the gaps. We think if we work hard and save money, we'll be secure. But one medical emergency can destroy everything. The bills are astronomical. The insurance denials are endless. The system is designed to protect the hospitals and insurance companies, not the patients. If you're reading this, here's what I learned too late. First, know your insurance network before an emergency happens. Have a list of in-network hospitals in your wallet. Tell your family which hospitals are covered. If you're conscious during an emergency, demand to be taken to an in-network facility. Second, understand that out-of-network coverage is essentially no coverage. The reductions and exclusions are so severe that you'll end up responsible for most of the bill. Third, get everything pre-authorized if possible, even in an emergency. I know that sounds insane. How do you pre-authorize emergency surgery? But somehow you're supposed to. Call your insurance company from the ambulance if you have to. Fourth, fight every denial. File appeals. Hire advocates. Don't accept the first answer. Insurance companies count on people giving up. Many denials are overturned on appeal, but only if you fight. Fifth, know that medical debt can be negotiated. Hospitals would rather get something than nothing. Don't agree to payment plans you can't afford. Don't drain your retirement accounts before exploring bankruptcy. Medical debt is dischargeable in bankruptcy. Retirement accounts often aren't. Finally, know that you're not alone. Millions of Americans face medical bankruptcy every year. It's not your fault. The system is broken. Robert and I are surviving. We have our house, our health, each other. We've cut our expenses dramatically. We don't travel anymore, don't eat out, don't do much of anything that costs money. Our children help when they can, though they have their own families and expenses. We're the lucky ones, in a way. Robert survived his heart attack. The surgery worked. Many people in our situation lose their spouse and their financial security. We only lost the financial security. But when I wake up at 3 in the morning, anxious about money, I think about the system that did this to us. A system that charges $500,000 for 3 days in a hospital. A system where insurance companies can deny coverage for emergency care. A system that forces seniors who did everything right into bankruptcy. Robert's heart attack saved his life and destroyed our retirement. That's the reality of American healthcare. And if it can happen to us, it can happen to anyone.